It's 4:23 a.m. on Tuesday, November 12, 2024. Figueroa Street in South Central Los Angeles is still dark, streetlights casting amber pools across cracked asphalt. The temperature hovers at 54 degrees, unusual cold for LA, the kind that seeps through clothing and settles in bones. A 2008 Peterbilt garbage truck rolls slowly down the empty street, its diesel engine rumbling, hydraulics hissing as it stops at a commercial dumpster outside a closed laundromat. Behind the wheel sits Marcus Webb, 42 years old, weathered hands gripping the steering column, reflective vest over a gray hoodie. Dark circles under his eyes from starting work at 3 a.m. every morning for the past 8 months. To anyone watching, he's exactly what he appears to be. Another sanitation worker grinding through the pre-dawn hours, collecting trash from businesses that most people never think about. What nobody knows, what the two vehicles now blocking both ends of Figueroa Street absolutely don't know, is that Marcus Webb is Special Agent Marcus Webb of the FBI's Transnational Anti-Gang Task Force. The garbage truck he's driving contains recording equipment worth $140,000. The route he follows was mathematically designed by FBI analysts to intersect with MS-13's patrol patterns at optimal observation times. His lunch breaks are encrypted briefings. His co-workers at LA Sanitation have no idea they've been working alongside a federal agent who speaks fluent Spanish, graduated top of his Quantico class, and has been wearing a wire every single shift for 237 consecutive days. 6 men exit the vehicles. Even in the darkness, Webb recognizes 4 of them from surveillance photos. MS-13 mid-level enforcers. The gang's tattoos are visible on necks and hands, the distinctive MS markings that identify them across 3 states. They're here to collect protection money. They're here to remind him that cooperation isn't optional in their territory. They're also walking into the final piece of evidence that will dismantle their entire Southern California operation. Webb's right hand moves to the radio mounted on his dashboard. To the approaching gang members, it looks like a nervous gesture. What they don't see is his thumb pressing the emergency signal. 3 short clicks that tell his handlers exactly what's happening. In 90 seconds, 14 tactical units positioned across Los Angeles County will move simultaneously. But first, Webb has to keep these 6 men talking. He has to get them close enough to the truck's hidden cameras. He has to act like the terrified civilian they expect him to be. He cuts the engine, steps down from the cab, shows his empty hands. The trap is set. Marcus Webb was born in Sacramento, California in 1982. His father was a detective with the Sacramento Police Department who worked gang violence cases throughout the 1990s. His mother was a paralegal who specialized in immigration law. Growing up, Marcus heard dinner table conversations about MS-13's expansion from El Salvador into American cities, conversations that most families never had. His father showed him crime scene photos not to traumatize him, but to educate him. "This is reality," Detective Webb would say. "Knowing about evil is the first step to fighting it." Marcus studied criminal justice at UC Berkeley, graduating in 2004 with honors and a particular focus on transnational organized crime. He applied to the FBI straight out of college. At 22, he was accepted into the academy at Quantico. His instructors noted his analytical mind. He could look at a crime scene and reconstruct events with disturbing accuracy. But what really set Marcus apart was his patience. While other trainees wanted to kick down doors and make arrests, Marcus understood that the best investigations took time. Months. Years. You didn't catch the big fish by rushing. He finished in the top 5% of his class and requested assignment to the gang task force. His first posting was Dallas, where MS-13 was establishing drug distribution networks throughout Texas. For 3 years, Marcus built cases brick by brick. He learned Spanish by immersion, spending time in immigrant communities, earning trust slowly. He studied the gang structure, their communication methods, their recruitment patterns. He understood something crucial. MS-13 wasn't just a criminal organization. It was a transnational corporation with sophisticated operational security. In 2011, he transferred to the Los Angeles field office. By then, MS-13 had become one of the FBI's top priorities. The gang had an estimated 10,000 members across the United States, with the largest concentration in Southern California. They controlled drug trafficking routes worth hundreds of millions annually. They'd expanded from street-level violence into complex extortion schemes targeting legitimate businesses. And they were good at avoiding law enforcement. Their leadership structure was deliberately compartmentalized, making it almost impossible to take down the entire organization with a single investigation. Marcus spent 6 years working traditional cases: surveillance, wiretaps, informants. He put away mid-level dealers and enforcers. But the leadership remained untouchable. Every time they arrested one lieutenant, 2 more emerged. The problem, Marcus realized, was that the FBI was fighting MS-13 using conventional methods. The gang expected surveillance. They expected wiretaps. They expected informants who could be intimidated or eliminated. In 2017, Marcus met Jennifer Chen, an FBI analyst who specialized in predictive modeling. They married 8 months later, a courthouse ceremony followed by dinner with 12 people. Jennifer understood Marcus's obsession with MS-13. She'd lost a cousin to gang violence in 2009. They didn't talk much about work at home, but they shared a fundamental belief: some fights matter more than others. By 2023, Marcus was a 15-year veteran with a reputation for patience and precision. He'd made 47 arrests, assisted in 200-plus investigations, and testified in 31 federal trials. His salary was $135,000 annually, comfortable, but not wealthy. He and Jennifer lived in a modest 2-bedroom house in Pasadena. No kids yet, though they talked about it. Jennifer wanted to wait until Marcus finished the big one, the case he'd been obsessing over for years. That case was Operation Clean Sweep. In early 2024, the FBI's Transnational Anti-Gang Task Force identified a new vulnerability in MS-13's operations. The gang had begun using sanitation companies as unwitting drug mules. They'd force garbage truck drivers to transport narcotics hidden inside commercial dumpsters, moving product through the city in plain sight. It was brilliant. Nobody stops a garbage truck. Nobody searches trash. The drivers were perfect targets. They worked alone, followed predictable routes, and were too terrified to report anything. The task force needed someone inside the system, not an informant. Those could be compromised. They needed an agent who could become invisible, who could operate autonomously for months without backup, who could maintain cover while documenting everything. Marcus volunteered immediately. The plan was audacious. The FBI would create a false employment history, plant Marcus inside LA sanitation as a legitimate worker, and design a route that would systematically intersect with MS-13's controlled territory. He'd collect trash, he'd observe, he'd record everything. And eventually the gang would approach him for protection money, standard procedure for any worker in their territory. Jennifer was against it initially. 8 months minimum, she said, reading the operational proposal. That's 8 months of leaving the house at 3 a.m. 8 months of physical labor. 8 months where I can't reach you during your shift. 8 months where one mistake gets you killed, and there's no backup close enough to save you. Marcus had no counter-argument except the one that mattered. This works. We take down their entire distribution network. Every lieutenant, every stash house, every financial pipeline. This is the big one. She approved it. Not as his wife, as the FBI analyst who understood the operational value. On March 18, 2024, Marcus Webb began his first shift as a sanitation worker. His route covered 27 commercial properties across South Central Los Angeles: laundromats, bodegas, mechanic shops, restaurants. Every single one paid protection money to MS-13. Every single one had been identified by FBI intelligence as part of the gang's logistics network. For 237 days, Marcus lifted 40-pound bags, emptied dumpsters, and drove the same route with mathematical precision. His garbage truck was modified by FBI technical services, cameras hidden in the side mirrors, recording equipment in the hydraulic compartment, GPS trackers that fed real-time location data to his handlers. His thermos was actually a secure communication device. His work boots contained emergency beacons. But the most important tool Marcus carried was his training. He'd spent 15 years learning to read people, to recognize patterns, to stay calm under pressure. Every morning at 3 a.m. he'd wake up, kiss Jennifer goodbye, and become someone else. Not Marcus Webb, FBI agent. Just Marcus, the quiet garbage man who showed up on time and didn't ask questions. His co-workers at the sanitation department liked him. He was reliable, didn't complain, helped newer workers learn their routes. They had no idea that Marcus's bathroom breaks were actually moments where he'd document license plates, photograph new gang graffiti, or upload encrypted reports to his handlers. They didn't know that when Marcus stopped for coffee at certain bodegas, he was actually positioning the truck's cameras to capture specific doorways where gang members conducted business. For 8 months, Marcus documented everything. He identified 47 gang members by face. He recorded over 600 hours of conversations. Gang members often spoke freely around the garbage man because he was invisible to them, just part of the urban landscape. He mapped the entire distribution network, tracked payment schedules, identified the hierarchy, and he waited for the inevitable moment when MS-13 would approach him directly, when they'd demand protection money, when they'd threaten him if he refused, when they'd provide the final incontrovertible evidence that would connect leadership to street-level extortion. That moment arrived at 4:23 a.m. on November 12, 2024. Marcus had been expecting it. Intelligence suggested that MS-13 was expanding their protection racket to include sanitation workers. A logical evolution, since the workers had access to commercial dumpsters the gang used for transport. His route deliberately brought him to Figueroa Street at the exact time when the local clique conducted their morning collections. When he saw the 2 vehicles blocking the street, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 8 months. Relief. The waiting was over. The case was about to break. 14 tactical units were positioned across the city, ready to execute simultaneous raids on MS-13 properties. They were just waiting for Marcus's signal, waiting for the gang to approach him to make their demands to provide the evidence on camera. As Marcus stepped down from the truck, he wasn't thinking about danger. He was thinking about procedure. Keep them talking. Get them close to the cameras. Make sure the audio captures everything. Stay calm. Stay in character. He'd spent 237 days preparing for this moment. He'd memorized every detail of MS-13's operational protocols. He knew their recruitment tactics, their punishment methods, their communication codes. He'd studied the 6 men now approaching him, their criminal histories, their positions in the gang hierarchy, their patterns. What Marcus didn't know, what the FBI's intelligence hadn't predicted, was that this wasn't a routine protection shakedown. This was an execution. 2 hours earlier, at 2:17 a.m., 6 MS-13 members gathered in the back room of a mechanics shop on Avalon Boulevard. The shop was a front. It showed legitimate income from car repairs, but its real purpose was as a meeting point for the gang's local clique. The back room contained a desk, metal folding chairs, and a police scanner that monitored LAPD frequencies. The 6 men represented mid-level enforcement, not street-level soldiers, but not leadership either. They handled collections, discipline, and territorial disputes. 4 of them had been with MS-13 for over a decade. 2 were recent promotions, proving themselves worthy of increased responsibility. Their leader for this operation was a man named Victor Ramos, 34 years old, covered in the distinctive MS-13 tattoos that mapped his criminal history across his skin. Victor had done 8 years in Pelican Bay for aggravated assault. He'd been released in 2019 and immediately returned to the gang. There was nowhere else for him to go. Prison had hardened him, stripped away whatever empathy he'd once possessed. He saw civilians as resources to be exploited. Resistance was met with violence. Cooperation was rewarded with survival. Victor had received orders from higher up in the organization: handle the new sanitation worker on the Figueroa route. The man had been working their territory for 8 months without paying protection. That was unacceptable. It signaled weakness. If one worker refused to pay, others might follow. The gang's authority would erode. But there was something else. One of their informants, a low-level worker at the sanitation department, had mentioned something odd about the new guy. He didn't socialize. He never complained. He showed up exactly on time, followed his route with precision, and disappeared immediately after his shift. That wasn't normal. Most workers hated the job, cut corners, showed up late. This guy was too perfect. Victor didn't trust perfection. In his world, perfect meant either cop or crazy. And crazy people didn't last 8 months on a garbage route in MS-13 territory. "We send a message tonight," Victor told the others. "This isn't just collection. We need to know who this guy is. If he's clean, he pays and we're done. If he's something else. Victor didn't finish the sentence. The others understood. At 3:45 a.m. they loaded into two vehicles, a 2015 Dodge Charger and a 2018 Honda Accord, both stolen the previous week, both fitted with fake plates. Victor rode in the Charger with two others. The remaining three took the Accord. They drove separate routes to Figueroa Street, arriving from different directions to avoid patterns that police might notice. They parked at opposite ends of the block and waited. Victor checked his phone, 4:21 a.m. The sanitation route schedule, obtained from their informant, showed the truck arriving at 4:23 a.m. MS-13 was nothing if not punctual when it came to violence. At 4:23 a.m. exactly, the Peterbilt garbage truck rolled onto Figueroa Street. Victor watched it slow, watched the driver position it next to the dumpster outside the laundromat. Standard procedure. Nothing unusual. Victor exited the Charger. The others followed, spacing themselves strategically. They weren't planning to shoot. That attracted too much attention, too much police response. This was supposed to be intimidation. Show force. Demand payment. Make it clear what happens to those who don't comply. But Victor's instincts were buzzing. Something felt wrong. The driver had seen them blocking the street, had to have seen them. But he didn't accelerate, didn't try to escape. He just stopped, cut the engine, stepped down. That wasn't the behavior of a terrified civilian. Victor's hand moved to the Glock tucked in his waistband. Around him, the others tensed. They'd done this hundreds of times. Approached workers, demanded payment, watched grown men cry and beg. It was routine, boring even, but this didn't feel routine. The driver stood next to the truck, hands visible, posture relaxed. Not aggressive, but not cowering either. He looked directly at Victor, made eye contact, waited. Victor approached, keeping 6 feet of distance. His voice was flat, emotionless. "You worked this route 8 months. You never paid. Why?" The driver's response was calm, measured. "Nobody told me I needed to pay. I just collect trash." Victor studied him. Early 40s, physically fit despite the job, steady gaze. No fear in his eyes. That was wrong. Everyone showed fear when MS-13 approached. Fear was the currency they traded in. "You pay now," Victor said. 800. Every week. You understand? The driver nodded slowly. "That's a lot of money for a sanitation worker. That's the cost of working our territory. Your territory." The driver repeated the words, and something in his tone made Victor's hand tighten on his concealed weapon. It wasn't defiance exactly. It was something else. Recognition. Like the driver had been waiting for Victor to say exactly those words. Victor took a step closer. "You got a problem with that?" "No problem," the driver said. "But I need to understand something first. This 800 weekly, that's protection money, right? You're claiming this territory belongs to MS-13? Now Victor was certain something was wrong. Normal people didn't ask questions. They didn't seek clarification. They paid or they got hurt. This man was doing neither. "Who are you?" Victor asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. The driver smiled then. Barely. Just a slight upturn of his mouth. And he said 5 words that changed everything. "Special Agent Marcus Webb, FBI." For 1.3 seconds, nobody moved. Victor's brain processed the impossibility of what he'd just heard. FBI agents didn't work as garbage men. They didn't spend 8 months on undercover assignments collecting trash. They didn't stand calmly in front of 6 gang members and announce their identity. Unless the entire operation, 8 months, 27 locations every morning at 3 a.m., had been designed to reach exactly this moment. Victor's hand was moving toward his weapon when he heard it, the sound of vehicles approaching from multiple directions. Not sirens. FBI tactical units didn't announce themselves. Just the rumble of engines, the screech of tires, the shouts of agents deploying. He looked at Marcus Webb, saw the calm certainty in the agent's eyes, and understood that he'd been played. They'd all been played. For 8 months, MS-13 had been watched, documented, recorded. Every conversation near the garbage truck, every payment they'd forced from businesses, every threat they'd made. The garbage man had been collecting evidence instead of trash. Victor's hand completed its motion, gripping the Glock. Around him, the other 5 gang members were reaching for their weapons. But FBI tactical units were already flooding the street. Armored vehicles, agents in full gear, rifles raised. Marcus Webb stood perfectly still, hands now raised to show he was federal, his vest clearly marked. He'd done his job. He'd gotten the confession on camera. He'd signaled his team. Operation Clean Sweep was executing across Los Angeles County. 14 simultaneous raids, 47 arrest warrants, 3 years of investigation culminating in this pre-dawn moment on Figueroa Street. Victor had one choice: surrender or fight. He chose wrong. The moment stretched impossibly long, one of those fractions of time where decisions are made faster than thought, where training and instinct override conscious reasoning. Victor's hand brought the Glock up from his waistband, his finger finding the trigger, his arm extending toward Marcus Webb. Marcus had been expecting this. 15 years of experience told him that when you corner an MS-13 enforcer, when you take away his options, violence becomes inevitable. The gang's entire culture was built on the principle that you never surrendered to law enforcement. Surrender meant cooperation. Cooperation meant death from your own people. Marcus was already moving before Victor's weapon cleared his waistband. Not away, toward. Close the distance, eliminate the firing angle, control the weapon. It was muscle memory from Quantico, from hundreds of hours on the tactical range, from scenarios drilled until they became automatic. 3 steps. Marcus covered the 6 feet between them in 1.8 seconds. His left hand shot out, gripping Victor's wrist, pushing the Glock away from center mass. His right hand came up in a palm strike, connecting with Victor's chin, snapping his head back. Victor stumbled but didn't go down. Prison had made him tough, used to violence, able to absorb impacts that would drop a civilian. Behind them, the other 5 MS-13 members were drawing weapons. FBI tactical agents were shouting commands. Federal agents, drop your weapons. On the ground. But gang members don't respond to commands. They respond to force. Gunfire erupted. Not from Victor, whose Glock was still trapped in Marcus's grip. From one of the others, a younger member, mid-20s, panicked by the sudden appearance of federal agents. His shot went wide, sparked off the garbage truck's metal frame, ricocheted into darkness. The FBI's rules of engagement were clear. Return fire only when civilian lives are in danger. The street was empty except for law enforcement and gang members. No innocents in the crossfire. The tactical teams held fire, advancing instead, using their vehicles as cover, maintaining disciplined formations. Marcus drove his knee into Victor's solar plexus, felt the air rush out of the gang leader's lungs. Victor's grip on the Glock loosened. Marcus twisted the weapon free, ejected the magazine in one smooth motion, racked the slide to clear the chamber. The live round spun through the air, landed on asphalt with a small metallic ping. Victor went down, gasping, his hands clutching his stomach. Marcus stepped back, kicked the empty Glock away, his hands immediately going up to show the tactical teams he was no threat. "Webb! Agent Webb! I'm clear!" The tactical commander, a veteran named Sarah Chen, no relation to Marcus's wife, shouted back confirmation. "Webb clear, move in!" The next 20 seconds were controlled chaos. FBI agents closed on the remaining 5 gang members, using overwhelming force and superior positioning. 2 more shots were fired, both from gang members, both missing their targets. The FBI agents didn't return fire. They didn't need to. Stun grenades detonated, the flashbang effect disorienting the gang members just long enough for agents to close the distance. Tackle, disarm, cuff. The entire takedown was textbook. Minimal violence, maximum efficiency. By 4:26 a.m., 3 minutes after the initial confrontation, all 6 MS-13 members were face down on Figueroa Street, hands zip-tied behind their backs, FBI agents reading them their rights. Marcus stood next to his garbage truck, breathing hard, adrenaline flooding his system. His left hand was scraped from the struggle with Victor. His heart rate was elevated, but he was uninjured. More importantly, he'd maintained cover until the exact right moment. The cameras in the truck had recorded everything. The approach, the demands, Victor's claim of territorial control, the attempted murder of a federal agent. Commander Chen approached, her expression professionally neutral. You good? I'm good, Marcus confirmed. Audio and video? Clean. Got everything. Chen glanced at the 6 detained gang members. They didn't know? Not until I told them. Marcus felt the exhaustion hitting now, the accumulated weight of 237 days in deep cover. They thought I was just another target. You played it perfect. Chen keyed her radio. All units, this is Tactical 1. Primary objective secure. Execute secondary raids. Repeat, execute secondary raids. Across Los Angeles County, 14 FBI tactical teams moved simultaneously. They hit 3 stash houses, one in Boyle Heights, one in Southgate, one in Huntington Park. They raided 2 money-counting operations. They arrested 4 financial facilitators who laundered MS-13's drug proceeds. They seized 2 weapons caches containing 47 firearms, from pistols to AR-15 rifles. Most importantly, they arrested the clique's leadership, the men who gave orders, who controlled territory, who turned neighborhoods into war zones, men whose names appeared in 200-plus case files, men who'd evaded prosecution for years because witnesses were too terrified to testify. This time, there would be no witnesses. Just 237 days of recorded evidence from a garbage truck's hidden cameras. Thousands of hours of surveillance. Financial records seized from the laundromat on Avalon Boulevard, where MS-13 stored their books behind a false wall in the basement. By sunrise, Operation Clean Sweep had effectively dismantled MS-13's Southern California distribution network. 47 arrests. $3.2 million in seized assets. Enough evidence to prosecute under RICO statutes, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, which meant federal prison time, not county jail. Marcus Webb sat in the back of an FBI vehicle, drinking coffee his handlers had brought, watching as the arrested gang members were loaded into transport vans. His shift was over, his cover was blown, his mission was complete. Jennifer arrived at 5:30 a.m., still in her FBI analyst credentials, her face showing the strain of 8 months spent tracking her husband through GPS coordinates, listening to encrypted check-ins, never certain he'd come home safe. She didn't say anything, just wrapped her arms around him and held on. Marcus held her back, feeling the reality settle in. He'd done it. The big one. The case that mattered. 8 months of waking up at 3 a.m., lifting trash, breathing diesel fumes, playing a role so completely that even his co-workers believed it. But as the sun rose over Figueroa Street, as crime scene technicians documented everything, as the FBI's Public Affairs Office prepared to announce the largest MS-13 bust in Los Angeles history, Marcus felt something unexpected. Not triumph, not satisfaction, relief that it was over, and a strange, hollow awareness that he'd spent 237 days living a lie, and now he had to figure out how to be himself again. Before we continue deeper into this story, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city and state in the comments. This operation happened in Los Angeles, but MS-13 operates in communities across America. I want to know where this channel reaches, and I want to hear your perspective on what makes someone volunteer for an assignment like this. 8 months earlier, March 18, 2024, 6:30 a.m., FBI Los Angeles Field Office, conference room on the 4th floor. Marcus Webb sat across from Assistant Director Rebecca Martinez and SAC, Special Agent in Charge, David Torres. Between them lay the operational proposal for what would become Operation Clean Sweep. 47 pages of analysis, risk assessment, resource allocation, and strategic objectives. Rebecca Martinez was a 22-year FBI veteran who'd built her career on complex organized crime cases. She'd worked Russian mafia investigations in New York, Sinaloa cartel operations in Arizona, and the MS-13 task force for the past 6 years. She had a reputation for approving bold operations, but only when the risk-to-reward ratio justified it. "Walk me through it again," she said, her eyes on Marcus. Not the operational details, the psychological component. 8 months maintaining cover. No direct contact with other agents. No backup within immediate response distance. If your cover blows, you're alone with people who've killed federal witnesses before. Marcus had spent 3 weeks preparing his answer. MS-13's biggest vulnerability is their visibility. They operate in plain sight because they've established territorial control through intimidation. But that visibility makes traditional surveillance effective. We can watch them, track them, document them. The problem is connecting their leadership to street-level crimes. They insulate themselves through layers of deniability. Which is why you want to become a garbage man, Torres said, not quite making it a question. A garbage man has access MS-13 doesn't expect. We're invisible infrastructure. Nobody pays attention to sanitation workers. But we're everywhere. We see everything. And if I can establish a route that intersects with their controlled properties, I can document their operations from inside their territory without triggering their counter-surveillance protocols. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. The psychological stress of deep cover is well documented. You'll be maintaining a false identity for months, living a physically demanding job while conducting surveillance, unable to discuss your real work with anyone except your handler, and those contacts will be limited to avoid patterns MS-13 might notice. Your marriage will be under strain. Your social connections will atrophy. You'll essentially be living two separate lives, and the cognitive dissonance can be severe. Marcus nodded. Jennifer and I have discussed this extensively. She's run the psychological modeling. I've read her analysis, Rebecca interrupted. She's professionally supportive. I'm asking if you're personally prepared. Marcus met her gaze. I've been working MS-13 cases for 13 years. I've attended funerals for their victims. I've interviewed families destroyed by their violence. I've watched them expand their operations because we can't build cases that stick to their leadership. This operation works because it's patient. It's not about making a quick bust. It's about systematically documenting their entire network until we have overwhelming evidence. I'm prepared to take the time that requires. Torres spoke up. What happens when they approach you for protection money? That's the moment of greatest risk. They'll be testing you, trying to determine if you're a threat. If your response is wrong, if anything about your cover seems off, they'll react with violence. I know. Marcus had thought about this constantly since proposing the operation. The key is establishing authentic presence before they approach. 8 months of routine. 8 months of being exactly what I appear to be. By the time they demand payment, I'll have been part of their landscape long enough that I'm boring. Predictable. Just another worker they can exploit. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Then, you understand that if this goes wrong, the Bureau's ability to protect you is limited. We can't have agents visibly following a garbage truck. That defeats the purpose of your cover. We can track you via GPS, monitor through remote surveillance, but immediate tactical response isn't guaranteed. I understand. You also understand that 8 months is the minimum time frame. It could extend longer depending on when MS-13 approaches you. Could be 9 months, could be a year. I understand. Rebecca exchanged a glance with Torres. Some unspoken communication passed between them. The kind of wordless dialogue that comes from years of working together, making life and death decisions about operations and personnel. Finally, Rebecca said, I'm approving the operation. Conditional on monthly psychological evaluations and weekly check-ins with your handler. First sign you're compromised, either your cover or your mental state, we extract you immediately. Clear? Clear. Good. Rebecca stood, offering her hand. Don't get killed doing this, Marcus. The paperwork would be terrible. It was the kind of dark humor that FBI agents use to acknowledge risk without dwelling on it. Marcus shook her hand, feeling the weight of what he'd just committed to. Torres walked him out of the conference room. In the hallway, he said quietly, My first deep cover assignment. I was infiltrating a credit card fraud ring in Miami. 3 months. Thought I was going crazy by week 8. You're doing 8 months minimum, probably longer, in significantly more dangerous circumstances. You sure about this? Marcus had been sure since the moment he'd proposed it. But standing in that hallway, about to fundamentally alter his life for an indefinite period, he felt the first whisper of doubt. He pushed it away. I'm sure. Torres nodded. Okay. We start your legend building next week. You'll need to become someone else convincingly enough that you believe it yourself. That's the only way this works. That evening, Marcus sat with Jennifer in their kitchen in Pasadena. She'd come home from the FBI field office where she worked as a senior analyst, changed into comfortable clothes, and was making dinner, her way of processing stress, cutting vegetables with precise, measured movements. Rebecca approved it, Marcus said. Jennifer's knife paused mid-cut, then continued. I know. She called me for a second opinion on the psychological assessment. What did you tell her? That you're too stubborn to recognize when something's a bad idea, but disciplined enough to execute it successfully anyway. Jennifer set down the knife, turned to face him. I also told her that if anything happens to you, I'll personally destroy every person involved in approving this operation. Marcus smiled despite the gravity. That's not very professional. I wasn't speaking as an FBI analyst, I was speaking as your wife. Jennifer crossed her arms. 8 months, Marcus. Maybe longer. That's 8 months where I track your GPS location constantly, where every time your signal goes dark for routine reasons I'll wonder if it's routine or if something's wrong. That's 8 months where you come home exhausted from physical labor and can't tell me about the actual work you're doing. That's 8 months where our life is on hold. I know what I'm asking of you. Do you? Jennifer's voice was sharp. Because I've run the statistics. Deep cover operations longer than 6 months have a 34% psychological impact rate on the officer and a 41% relationship stress rate on their families. You're planning for 8 months minimum. Those percentages get worse the longer the operation runs. Marcus stood, moved to where Jennifer was standing, put his hands on her shoulders. I need you to tell me if you can't handle this, not as an analyst, as my wife, because if you can't, I'll withdraw the proposal. I won't do this without your genuine support. Jennifer looked at him for a long time. Her eyes were fierce, the same intensity she brought to every analysis, every problem she solved. I can handle it, but you need to promise me something. Anything. You come home. However this operation ends, whether it's 8 months or 12 or 18, you come home. You don't take unnecessary risks. You don't play hero. You document, you observe, you collect evidence, and when it's time to execute the arrests, you let the tactical teams handle it. Your job is intelligence gathering, not apprehension. Marcus promised. Meant it completely. He would keep that promise for 236 days. On day 237, circumstances would require him to break it. The weeks following the initial arrests were methodical, calculated, and overwhelming. The FBI's Los Angeles field office became the operational center for prosecuting 47 MS-13 members under federal RICO statutes. But Marcus Webb's involvement didn't end with the arrests on Figueroa Street. He had 237 days of evidence to process, over 600 hours of recorded audio, thousands of photographs, GPS tracking data that mapped the gang's movements across Southern California, financial records seized from 3 locations, witness statements from 27 business owners who'd been paying protection money. The evidence was overwhelming, but it had to be organized, authenticated, and presented in a way that would survive legal challenges from expensive defense attorneys. Marcus spent 16-hour days in the FBI field office, working with prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office. They'd commandeered a conference room and covered every wall with timeline charts, organizational hierarchies, financial flow diagrams. Each piece of evidence had to be connected to specific charges. Each recording had to be transcribed, translated. Many conversations were in Spanish, and cross-referenced with other evidence. Jennifer worked alongside him, though officially she was assigned to different cases. But her analytical skills were invaluable for organizing the massive amount of data Operation Clean Sweep had generated. She built database structures that allowed prosecutors to search for specific information, which gang member was present at which location on which date, which businesses paid protection money when, which vehicles were used for what purposes. By late November, the prosecution team had built an airtight case. The lead prosecutor, an assistant U.S. attorney named Sarah Brennan, was confident. This is the most comprehensive RICO case I've seen against MS-13. We have direct evidence connecting their leadership to street-level crimes. We have financial records proving profit sharing. We have recorded conversations where they explicitly discuss their organizational structure. If we can't convict on this, the justice system is broken. But MS-13 didn't wait for trial. On December 3, 2024, Marcus received a threat assessment from the FBI's Security Division. Intelligence indicated that MS-13's national leadership had identified him as the primary threat to their Southern California operations. There were credible threats against his life. The gang was actively attempting to identify his home address, his family connections, his patterns. The FBI's standard response would be protective custody, relocate Marcus and Jennifer to a secure location, provide 24-hour security, maintain that posture until the trial concluded and the gang members were convicted. Marcus refused. "They want me hiding," he told Rebecca Martinez in her office. "They want to demonstrate that cooperating with law enforcement means living in fear. If I go into protective custody, every potential witness in every MS-13 case sees that and thinks, even FBI agents have to hide. I'm not giving them that narrative." Rebecca was not pleased. "Your safety isn't a narrative decision. MS-13 has killed law enforcement before. They have resources, connections, and motivation. They're not going to stop trying just because you're defiant. Then we use that." Marcus had thought this through carefully. "We make me visible. We publicize my role in Operation Clean Sweep. We make it clear that killing a federal agent brings consequences they can't absorb. The FBI doesn't back down from threats. We escalate. That's the message. You're volunteering to be bait. I'm volunteering to do my job without hiding." Rebecca considered this. The strategic logic was sound. Showing weakness invited more attacks. Showing strength deterred them. But the personal risk to Marcus was substantial. "We'll compromise," she finally said. "You maintain a normal public profile, but we increase security measures. Plainclothes agents monitoring your movements, enhanced surveillance of your home, regular threat assessments, and if intelligence indicates imminent danger, you comply with protective measures immediately, non-negotiable." Marcus agreed. What neither of them anticipated was how MS-13 would actually respond. On December 15, 2024, Jennifer Chen was leaving the FBI field office at 7:30 p.m. after a long day of trial preparation. She walked to her car in the secured parking garage, badge access only, cameras throughout, regular security patrols. As safe as any location could be. She unlocked her Honda Accord, opened the driver's door, and found an envelope on her seat. No postage, no address, just her name written in neat block letters, Jennifer Chen. Jennifer's training kicked in immediately. Don't touch it, don't move it. Call security. Treat it as a potential explosive device or biological hazard. The FBI's hazmat team responded in 9 minutes. They evacuated the parking garage, deployed detection equipment, and carefully examined the envelope. No explosives, no chemical agents, just paper. Inside was a single photograph, Jennifer and Marcus's wedding photo from 2017, the courthouse ceremony, the two of them smiling, surrounded by friends. Someone had drawn a red X across Marcus's face. On the back of the photo, a message in Spanish. Los agentes mueren. Las familias sufren. Agents die. Families suffer. The security breach was enormous. MS-13 had somehow accessed a secured FBI parking garage, identified Jennifer's vehicle, and placed a direct threat without triggering any alarms. The investigation into how they'd accomplished this would take weeks. But the immediate problem was clear. MS-13 wasn't just threatening Marcus, they were threatening Jennifer. And the message wasn't subtle. If they could access her car in a secured FBI facility, they could access her anywhere. Rebecca Martinez called an emergency meeting that night. Marcus and Jennifer sat across from her, along with David Torres and the head of FBI security for the Los Angeles office, a veteran agent named Robert Hayes. "We're putting you both in protective custody," Rebecca said immediately. "This isn't up for discussion. MS-13 just demonstrated capability and intent. They're escalating." Marcus's jaw was tight. "If we hide, they win. If you die, they definitely win," Rebecca shot back. "And I'm not interested in posthumous medals. I want living agents who can testify at trial." Jennifer spoke for the first time since the envelope had been found. Her voice was calm, analytical, the same tone she used when briefing complex intelligence assessments. "The photograph suggests they have access to personal information predating Marcus's undercover assignment. That wedding photo was never publicly posted online. It exists in our home and in the possession of maybe 12 people who attended the ceremony. They either accessed our home, which seems unlikely given our security measures, or they compromised someone in our social circle." Robert Hayes nodded. We're investigating both possibilities. But until we identify the breach, we have to assume MS-13 has comprehensive information about both of you. Then protective custody is temporary at best, Jennifer continued. They'll wait us out. The trial is scheduled for March 2025. That's 3 months. We can't maintain protective custody for 3 months and then return to normal life. They'll just resume the threats. So what do you suggest? Rebecca asked. Jennifer looked at Marcus, some unspoken communication passing between them. Then she turned back to Rebecca. We escalate, not by hiding, by exposing their threat publicly. FBI doesn't back down from gang intimidation. We hold a press conference. We make Marcus visible. We make it clear that threatening federal agents brings federal resources they can't match. We dare them to follow through. The room was silent. What Jennifer was proposing was strategically sound but personally dangerous. It would paint an even larger target on Marcus, but it would also demonstrate that the FBI refused to be intimidated. Rebecca looked at David Torres. Your assessment? Torres was quiet for a moment. It's a calculated risk. But everything about Operation Clean Sweep was a calculated risk. We can't conduct an 8-month undercover operation and then hide when the gang retaliates. That undermines the entire purpose. We took MS-13's territory by being smarter and more patient than they are. Now we show we're not afraid of their response. Rebecca's decision took another 30 seconds. Then, okay, we go public, but with conditions. Increased security details for both of you. No solo travel, ever. Enhanced monitoring of all communications, and we accelerate the trial timeline if possible. The faster we get convictions, the faster this threat diminishes. The press conference happened 2 days later, December 17, 2024. FBI Los Angeles Field Office, media room packed with reporters from local and national outlets. Rebecca Martinez stood at the podium with Marcus beside her, presenting the details of Operation Clean Sweep to the public for the first time. The story was compelling. An FBI agent spending 8 months undercover as a garbage man, systematically documenting MS-13's operations from inside their territory. The largest gang bust in Los Angeles history. 47 arrests, millions in seized assets. A sophisticated operation that combined patience, technology, and old-fashioned investigative work. The media coverage was extensive. Local news ran the story as their lead for 3 consecutive days. National outlets picked it up. CNN, NBC, Fox News. Marcus's face was suddenly everywhere, identified as the agent who'd taken down MS-13's Southern California network. The FBI's strategic calculation was simple. Make Marcus so publicly associated with law enforcement that killing him would bring overwhelming federal response. Make it clear that an attack on Marcus Webb wasn't just an attack on one agent. It was an attack on the FBI itself. MS-13 received the message, but they didn't back down. They adapted. On January 8, 2025, at 2:30 p.m., Marcus was driving home from the FBI field office. Jennifer was with him. They'd been following the security protocols requiring them to travel together. 2 FBI agents in a plainclothes vehicle followed at a discreet distance, standard protective detail procedure. They were on Interstate 10, merging toward the Pasadena exit, when Marcus noticed the vehicle behind them. A black Ford F-150, tinted windows following at a consistent distance. Not unusual. Thousands of vehicles on LA freeways at any given moment. But something about its positioning triggered Marcus's attention. Jennifer, he said quietly, not taking his eyes off the mirror. Black F-150, 2 cars back. Notice anything? Jennifer had learned to trust Marcus's instincts. She adjusted her side mirror, observed the vehicle. After a moment, it's maintaining exact spacing. Not normal traffic behavior, and the driver's head position suggests he's looking at us, not the road ahead. Marcus keyed the radio that connected to their protective detail. This is Webb, possible surveillance vehicle on R6. Black F-150, license plate. He recited the number. The protective detail's response was immediate. Copy that. We're running the plate. Maintain normal speed. We'll intercept if it follows you off the freeway. Marcus took the Pasadena exit. The F-150 followed. That confirmed it. Surveillance at minimum, possible prelude to an attack at worst. Marcus's mind went tactical. They were in a residential area now, traffic lighter, more vulnerable. The protective detail was behind them, but if the F-150 made an aggressive move, the response time could be critical seconds too slow. "Call it in," Marcus told Jennifer. "Possible threat vehicle actively following us." Jennifer was already on her phone to FBI dispatch. "This is Special Agent Jennifer Chen, badge number 4729. Agent Marcus Webb and I are being actively followed by a possible MS-13 vehicle. Current location Pasadena, Colorado Boulevard approaching Hill Avenue. Requesting immediate backup and coordinated response." Dispatch's voice was calm, professional. "Units are responding. ETA 4 minutes. Do not proceed to your residence. Maintain position in public area with witnesses." Marcus made a split-second decision. Instead of continuing toward their house, he turned into a large shopping center parking lot. A Target store, grocery stores, restaurants. Plenty of people around. Witnesses, cameras. Not an ideal location for an attack. The F-150 followed them into the parking lot. Marcus parked near the Target entrance where security cameras would have clear visibility. The protective detail vehicle pulled in behind them, agents immediately exiting, hands moving toward concealed weapons. The F-150 parked 3 rows away. Nobody exited. For 2 minutes, nothing happened. Just a standoff in a Target parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon. Shoppers walking past, completely unaware of the tension. Then the F-150's driver's door opened. A man stepped out, mid-30s, casual clothing, no visible weapons. He looked directly at Marcus's vehicle, made eye contact, and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a message. "We know where you are. We can follow you anywhere. We're not afraid of your protective detail." The man got back in the F-150 and drove away calmly, like he'd just been running errands. The protective detail agents ran the license plate. "Stolen vehicle, reported missing from Riverside County 3 days earlier." By the time LAPD units arrived to search for the F-150, it had disappeared into Los Angeles' sprawling street network. That evening, in a debriefing at the FBI field office, Rebecca Martinez was blunt. "They're probing your security, testing response times, trying to identify patterns in your protective detail. This is exactly what we were concerned about." "They didn't make an attempt," Marcus pointed out. "Just surveillance. Today, next time might be different." Rebecca looked at both Marcus and Jennifer. "I need you to understand something. MS-13 isn't going to back down just because we publicize the operation. If anything, the publicity increased pressure on them to retaliate. Their leadership sees this as an existential threat. If one federal investigation can take down their entire Southern California operation, what's to stop the FBI from doing the same nationally? They need to send a message that cooperation with law enforcement is fatal." Jennifer spoke up. "So what do? We can't hide indefinitely. The trial is in 2 months. We increase security measures," Rebecca said, "and we move the trial timeline up if possible. The U.S. Attorney's Office is willing to fast-track if it cuts down the window for retaliation." Marcus knew rushing the trial could hand the defense an argument about not having enough time to prepare, but he also understood the subtext. If he was dead, none of that would matter. The room went quiet. Jennifer broke the silence, planting her hands on the table. "So the rule is simple," she said. "No detours, no improvising. Every time we leave the house, every mile we drive, it's on a planned route with protection in place." Over the next few weeks, their lives shrank into a tight security schedule. They left home with escorts, varied their routes daily, avoided restaurants, social events, and any spot without a clear exit. It felt like a moving prison, free to go anywhere in theory, but always inside an invisible security perimeter. Even so, MS-13's message was clear. First the truck tailing them on I-10, then the driver's casual smile in the Target parking lot, like he was reminding them he could still get close. The threat wasn't just physical, it was psychological. No matter how many agents surrounded them, Marcus and Jennifer knew they were targets, and every trip between home, the field office, and the courthouse was going to be a test of nerves.